Hello my friends, it's the Game Boy Geek here. Today, we find ourselves in World War I battlefields of Verdun, where the German and French armies battle it out. Verdun is a card game where you're trying to overrun the opponent's fortifications and gain their assets. It's for 2 or 4 players. It takes 20 to 30 minutes to play, for ages 12 and up, and published by Dragon Dawn Productions. Now it's being crowdfunded right now, so I'm going to show you how the game works and I'll see you on the other side. This is a Kickstarter preview, so all the art and components you see here, they're not final, they are prototypes. To see all the most up-to-date art and components, check the Kickstarter link in the description of this video. Verdun is a 2 or 4 player game. I'm going to show you the 4 player game first. That is the team game where you're playing with somebody else. Now, 2 people will be on the French team and 2 people will be on the German team. Now, both teams will strategically set up their set of fortifications, which are essentially going to be trying to defend against the other player, because this is going to be a card game, and they're also going to be setting up their assets. Now, these fortifications and assets are a main part of how you score in the game. But we'll talk more in detail of how you score and how you defend here in just a moment. Let's talk about the card play. Now you'll be sitting across from your partner, and everybody's going to have 12 cards in their hand. Now the cards will either be from the French side, or they're going to be from the German side. Doesn't matter which side you're playing, you're going to have a hand of cards that will likely have cards from both sides on them. Now the lead player is going to play a card into the trick, and they're going to play a French 6. Now the player to their left, who is their opponent, is going to play a card. Let's say they play the German 6. Then the player across is going to play. They are partnered with this player. Let's say they play an 8 of French. Notice you do not have to follow suit in this game. And this last player, who is teamed up with the German player, has a bunch of choices that they can make. But let's say they just decide to throw a 5. So in this case, we're going to add up the values here. We have 14 for the French and we have 11 for the German. So right now, the French are up by 3. Now, before this specific hand started, the French team used this assault token to pick which one of these they were going to be going after. Now, the German players knew this, and I'll get into some of the strategy of setting these up earlier, and so they kind of knew what they had to deal with here, and that went into their strategy of playing cards. Now, the French are winning by 3. So in this case, they are going to flip over this fortification, and it's going to have some defense there. That says 2. So if we add that 2 to the Germans, they go in from 11 to 13, they're still 1 short. Now, if this happened to have added to those cards and they were equal or better than the attackers, who were the French, then nothing else would have happened, but the French now would have known what the defense is here for a future turn. They might select this knowing what defense is here. But in this case, they didn't. So even when the Germans added this to their cards, they still did not at least equal the attackers. They were less than. So in that case, the French actually got to this secret asset here, and this is going to get them a point. In this case, it's just 1. And in that case, the French team would have collected both the flipped overrun fortification and this asset token and placed it in their own scoring pile. So let's step back a moment here and talk about the setup and the strategy even at the beginning of the game. Now here you'll see that there are 5 fortifications. There's actually a 6th one. At the beginning of the game, they randomly shuffle these 6, French have 6 as well, and they will then randomly have 5 of these values. Now these values range from 0 to 7. But then, once they have the 5 different values, they're going to take their assets here, and they're going to strategically pair them up with a specific amount of defense from those fortifications. So, let's say, these would normally be face down at the beginning of the game. Let's say this was the one that was removed, the 3, and this is what they were left with. They paired them up. They put their best headquarter with a pretty good defense. Not the most, because they didn't want to be too obvious, but they did the 5. The 1, well, they're going to get through that pretty easy. The 5 is going to be, really good defense, maybe to kind of bluff a little bit here, and the 4 and the 3 and the 2 and the 1 there. And so you get to strategically set these up. But they might bluff. They might put a 2, which isn't a very strong defense, against their headquarter. Why? Well, they would know this, and when it's time to play, and if French is attacking this, of course these would be face down, and they know that this is a 2 and this is a 7-point asset, well, they're going to play some pretty strong cards to make sure that they win this. And if not, they know they need to be very close, because if this flips, they want this 2 to basically, help them defend there. And then if this is flipped over, for example, in a real game, let's say they went here, they had to use this for the defense, and it did defend. Well, maybe next turn, that the French is the attacker, they're like, yeah, there's a 2 defense here, there's probably nothing really good there, let's go for something else, where they're bluffing that there's their headquarter back there. So there's a lot of strategy into the setup. However, let's say in that same play, it was 14 French to 12 in the Germans. So the French are attacking the Germans are down by 2, and so they would have flipped over the fortification, and it's 2. Now in this case, they at least equal the attack, so they do not flip this. And so then it will end up being, the Germans' turn to attack and decide which one they want to fight. But the French team has learned something, that there's a 2 fortification here. So they got to go, hey, are they bluffing, or is there something not that great down there on the other side where these assets are? However, let's say this is what was played. Now the French team would still win, and even with the 2 fortification, they would still win as the attacker. Either way, you're going to go to casualties. Now in this case, the French team was the winners, and so they're going to lose their lowest ranked card. And this is a 6. Now on these cards are skulls. This is the amount of casualties. These are essentially minus points. So this is going to be worth minus 2 points at the end of the game. The French must take this card as their casualties. The team that wins takes their lowest card. In this case, it's that. The team that lost must take their highest card. So in this case, it's 3 casualties, and this goes into the German side. This is going to give them minus 3 points at the end. Now these are the survivors. The highest card of the survivors is going to get a tactical card. Now you can at most only hold 2 of these cards, and when you play a normal card into the trick, you can also play 1 tactical card. And these do all sorts of things that break the rules of the game, like artillery, everyone dies, or mustard gas, each side loses 1 additional card, or an airstrike adds 3 to your side's total regardless of the color of the card you play, and things like that. Then the player to the left will be the attacker. So in this case, it's German, and they will decide which one to attack. They would lead, and you keep going like this back and forth. Now you'll continue doing this to the end of the round, which is when all the tricks have been played, 12 of them for a team game, and then you're going to score up the points for the round. Now let's say we're scoring the French team here. You get 1 point for each of the fortifications that were not overrun, meaning they weren't flipped. You would flip your assets over, and you would score the points of the assets that you protected. So in this case, it's 8, 9, and this is 1 point, so that's 10. Now you're also going to score 1 point for each of the flipped fortifications from the other team. So even though these have values on them, those are the defensive values, they're still just worth 1. So 1, 2, 3. And the French team would get 1 for having this one flipped, even though it was never completely all the way overrun having the team get that specific asset. You'd also get the points on the assets from the other team that you captured, in this case, 1, 5, and 7. But then you would subtract all of the skulls because those are your casualties. Now, you could play between 1 and 3 rounds that you decide at the beginning of the game, and whoever has the most points at the end of the amount of rounds that you play is the winner. Now, there are some special cards. Now, the cards go as high as 13 and as low as 2. The general is actually used in the standard game, and when you play this, you can say whether it's a 1 or 14. Now, the spy here, the spy is the value of the previously played card. Right now, in this prototype, the C means copy, essentially, but it is a spy. The chaplain always counts as your color, and it's a rank of 2. And finally, the scout also acts always as your color, and it's a rank 8, but it prevents any opponents from playing tactical cards for the remainder of that trick. And also in the basic game, the 2s and 3s are pulled out, but they're added back in this advanced game. Now, if you're playing the 2-player game, then each of you are on different sides, but you'll still end up playing 4 cards. You'll play a card, your opponent will, you will, and your opponent will. So you're essentially playing both cards alternately with the other player, but then there'll be a draw pile that you'll draw 1 card at the end. So you're playing 2 cards, you'll draw 1 back, so your hand slowly dwindles down. Well, there you have Verdun, and as I showed in the overview, you're trying to overrun the opponent's fortifications and gain their assets, and you can play in 2 players or in a 4-player team battle. Now, you can also add in special cards for an advanced game, and if you'd like to see the most up-to-date art and components and all the different pledge levels available, you can click the link below me right in the description of this video. That's going to take you directly to the crowdfunding page, and I'm sure that Dragon Dawn Productions would love your support.